Welcome to World News. This is Jyoti. Let's dive into the details. French Prime Minister Sébastien Lecornu has narrowly survived 2 no-confidence votes in the National Assembly, allowing him to remain in office and tackle the formidable task of passing the 2026 budget. The vote is brought forward by the far-left France, unbowed and far-right national rallies fell short of the majority needed to oust him, thanks in part to support from the Socialist Party after Lecornu pledged to suspend a controversial pension reform. With his government intact, Lecornu now faces intense negotiations in a deeply fractured lower house to push through a slimmed-down austerity budget for the European Union's second largest economy. The outcome will be critical for France's fiscal stability and political direction heading into 2026.
18 votes. To hang on, Lecornu said he would pause President Macron's unpopular pension reform, the one that raises the retirement age from 62 to 64. That helped convince enough socialists and conservatives to hold their fire, at least for now. The hard left says it's time for fresh presidential elections. The far right claims the system's rigged to keep them out. And Lecornu insists upon 18 votes. To hang on, Lecornu said he would pause President Macron's unpopular pension reform, the one that raises the retirement age from 62 to 64. That helped convince enough socialists and conservatives to hold their fire, at least for now. The hard left says it's time for fresh presidential elections. The far right claims the system's rigged to keep them out. And Lecornu insists upon
Typhoon Halong's remnants have wreaked havoc on Alaska's western coast, triggering one of the largest evacuations in the state's history. Hundreds of residents were airlifted to join base Elmendorf Richards on after record-breaking storms surges inundated 2 low-lying native communities in the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta. The powerful storm washed away homes, some with the people still inside, resulting in at least 1 confirmed death and 2 missing persons. The U.S. Coast Guard rescued 2 dozen individuals from homes swept out to sea, while over 1,500 people were displaced across the region. Emergency shelters, including schools with limited facilities, are now housing evacuees as officials race to access damage and prepare for worsening winter conditions. Senate Democrats have rejected a stopgap spending bill for the 10th consecutive time, prolonging a government shutdown that has now entered its 3rd week. The refusal stems from a firm stance on health care. They insist Congress must address subsidies for Affordable Care Act ACA marketplace plans before any funding deal is approved. Democrats argue that millions of Americans, including small business owners, farmers and contractors, could face steep premium hikes if subsidies are not extended soon. The repeated votes have become a daily ritual on the Senate floor, highlighting the deep partisan divide. Meanwhile, House Republicans have left Washington and hundreds of thousands of federal workers remain furloughed with no guaranteed paychecks in sight.
The bottom line is we are fighting for the American people. We see the anguish they face everywhere we go, in our districts, in our states. People are not just, oh, this is something new and not so good. They're saying it's horrible. What am I going to do? With so many, another person I met the kid has cancer and the treatment has been cut off, the research has been cut off. We are fighting for the American people.
The partisan Republican spending bill that guts the health care of the American people has now been defeated a total of 10 times. Yet, Senate Republicans continue to do the same exact thing and expect different results. That's the classic definition of legislative insanity. The problem is, Republicans aren't serious as it relates to solving the affordable health care crisis that they've created, solving the cost of living crisis that they've made worse. As Democrats, we've made clear, we will sit down anytime, any place with anyone to find a bipartisan path forward to reopening the government, standing by our hardworking federal civil servants, enacting a spending agreement that actually makes
The bottom line.
Been indicted on 18 federal counts for allegedly sharing classified government information related to a book project. Prosecutors claim Bolton transmitted and retained national defense material between 2018 and 2025, including top secret notes and diary entries. The indictment alleges he shared sensitive content with unauthorized individuals, potentially for use in a manuscript. Each count under the Espionage Act carries up to 10 years in prison. Bolton has denied wrongdoing, calling the charges politically motivated. The case adds to growing scrutiny of officials accused of mishandling classified data. No court date has been announced yet, and the investigation continues amid heightened tensions over national security disclosures.
Was charged on Thursday with sharing sensitive government information, an alleged violation of the Espionage Act. The sweeping 18-count indictment accuses Bolton of sharing notes with two of his relatives for possible use in a book he was writing. The shared materials allegedly included more than 1,000 pages of information about his day-to-day activities as National Security Advisor, including top-secret information. The indictment does not identify the relatives, but two people familiar with the matter said they are Bolton's wife and daughter. Prosecutors also said Bolton failed to disclose that he had stored classified information on an email account that was hacked by a cyber actor tied to the Iranian government after Bolton left government service. Bolton's lawyer denies that he unlawfully shared or stored any information. And in a statement, Bolton said, quote, "I look forward to the fight to defend my lawful conduct and to expose his abuse of power." Trump was asked about the indictment on Thursday.
I didn't know that. You tell me for the first time, but I think he's, a bad person. I think he's a bad guy. Yeah, he's a bad guy. It's too bad, but it's the way it goes.
The indictment marks the third time in recent weeks the Justice Department has secured criminal charges against one of Trump's critics. In recent months, the president has actively pushed Attorney General Pam Bondi's Justice Department to bring charges against his perceived adversaries, including former FBI Director James Comey and New York Attorney General Letitia James. Inside the Justice Department, according to a person familiar with the matter, the case against Bolton is viewed as stronger than the prosecutions of Comey and James. No court appearance date was listed for Bolton as of Thursday evening. Each count is punishable by up to 10 years in prison if Bolton is convicted, but any sentence would be determined by a judge based on a range of factors. President Donald Trump's former National Security Advisor John Bolton was charged on Thursday with sharing sensitive government information and alleged
States for what it called efforts to stoke global panic over its rare earth exports control. The Chinese Ministry of Commerce accused U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent of making grossly distorted remarks about a top Chinese trade negotiator, following his public criticism of Beijing's tightening grip on rare earth shipments. Bessent had suggested that China's actions were aimed at weakening the global economy and leveraging its dominance in critical minerals. In response, China issued a detailed rebuttal defending its policy as a legitimate regulatory measure and rejecting a White House appeal to roll back the curbs. The export restrictions set to take effect on November 8 have raised concerns about supply chain disruptions in industries reliant on rare earths such as electronics, defense, and automotive manufacturing.
Commerce Ministry spokesman China on Thursday accused the U.S. of stoking panic over its rare earth controls and rejected a White House call to roll back the measures set to take effect next month. China produces over 90% of the world's processed rare earths and rare earth magnets. They are vital materials in products ranging from electric vehicles to aircraft engines and military radars. On Thursday, China's Commerce Ministry spokesperson said the U.S. was misrepresenting its policies.
The U.S. interpretations have grossly distorted and exaggerated China's measures and deliberately provoked unnecessary misunderstanding and panic.
The comments come as U.S. President Donald Trump prepares to meet Chinese President Xi Jinping in South Korea later this month to try to hash out a trade deal. Trump was asked about the state of the relationship on Wednesday.
You're meeting with President Xi in a few weeks.
Yeah.
If you can't come to an agreement or a deal at that meeting, are we in for a sustained trade war with China?
Well, you're in one now. Look, we have 100% tariff. If we didn't have tariffs, we would be exposed as being a nothing. We would have no defense. You know, they've used tariffs on us, but we've never had anybody sitting in that chair that felt the need to do it.
China's expanded rare earths export controls left trade negotiators and analysts the world over wondering whether it intends to require manufacturers of any product anywhere in the world containing even trace amounts of Chinese rare earths to apply for a license to ship it to its final destination. China's Commerce Ministry told reporters that was not the case. U.S. Trade Representative Jameson Greer on Wednesday called China's new measures a global supply chain power grab and said that he expected Beijing not to implement them. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent suggested there could be another possible extension to the current 90-day tariff truce, which is set to expire around November 9th. China on Thursday accused the U.S. of stoking set to take effect next month. China produces over 90% of the world's processed rare earths and rare earth magnets. They are vital materials in products ranging from electric vehicles to aircraft engines and military radars. On Thursday, China's Commerce Ministry spokesperson said the U.S. was misrepresenting its policies.
The U.S. interpretations have grossly distorted and exaggerated China's measures and deliberately provoked unnecessary misunderstanding and panic.
The comments come as U.S. President Donald Trump prepares to meet Chinese President Xi Jinping in South Korea later this month to try to hash out a trade deal. Trump was asked about the state of the relationship on Wednesday.
You're meeting with President Xi in a few weeks.
Yeah.
If you can't come to an agreement or a deal at that meeting, are we in for a sustained trade war with China?
Well, you're in one now. Look, we have 100% tariff. If we didn't have tariffs, we would be exposed as being a nothing. We would have no defense. You know, they've used tariffs on us, but we've never had anybody sitting in that chair that felt the need to do it.
China's expanded rare earths export controls left trade negotiators and analysts the world over wondering whether it intends to require manufacturers of any product anywhere in the world containing even trace amounts of Chinese rare earths to apply for a license to ship it to its final destination. China's Commerce Ministry told reporters that was not the case. U.S. Trade Representative Jameson Greer on Wednesday called China's new
Israel has announced preparations to reopen the Rafah border crossing between Gaza and Egypt, aiming to allow the movement of Palestinians in and out of the enclave. However, no official date has been set. As tensions persist between Israel and Hamas over alleged violations of the U.S. mediated ceasefire agreement, the reopening is contingent on Hamas fulfilling its commitments, particularly the return of the bodies of Israeli hostages. Israel claims that Hamas has failed to hand over all 28 deceased hostages, having returned only a partial number. This dispute has stalled key aspects of the truce, including humanitarian aid deliveries and border negotiations on Gaza's future governance.
Israel said on Thursday it was preparing for the reopening of Gaza's Rafah crossing with Egypt to let Palestinians in and out amid a fragile ceasefire with Hamas. A dispute over the return of hostages' bodies held by Hamas threatened to derail the truce. Families of some of the slain hostages, whose bodies were returned to Israel, laid them to rest on Thursday. Hamas has handed over 10 bodies and said it handed over all bodies it could recover. But Israel said one body was not that of a hostage and demanded that the militant group return the bodies of 19 hostages it had not handed over. The armed wing of Hamas said it requires the admission of heavy machinery and excavating equipment into the Israel-blocked Palestinian enclave after much of it was reduced to rubble. Jaco Cilliers, a United Nations Development Program special representative, said there were some 60 million U.S. tons of debris in Gaza. A Hamas official on Thursday accused Israel of violating the ceasefire by killing at least 24 people in shootings since Friday, and said a list of such violations was handed over to mediators. The Israeli military did not immediately respond. It had previously said that some Palestinians have ignored warnings not to approach Israeli ceasefire positions, and troops, quote, opened fire to remove the threat. While some aid began trickling in on Wednesday, the UN said it was nowhere near enough for the 2.2 million mostly homeless population. Palestinians in Khan Yunis said that nothing has come. Israel has said the next phase of U.S. President Donald Trump's 20-point plan to end the war calls for Hamas to give up its weapons, which it has so far refused to do. Hamas has instead launched a security crackdown in urban areas vacated by Israeli forces, demonstrating its power through public executions and clashes with local armed clans. On Thursday, Trump said in a Truth Social post that if Hamas continued to kill people in Gaza, then, quote, we will have no choice but to go in and kill them. Trump did not offer details on how he would follow through on that threat.
Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney announced plans to meet senior Chinese leaders in the upcoming weeks as part of a border diplomatic re-engagement. However, he declined to comment on whether Canada would consider lifting its 100% tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles in exchange for Beijing removing its steep duties on Canadian canola, pork and seafood. China's ambassador recently proposed this trade-off publicly, suggesting a resolution to the ongoing dispute that has severely impacted prairie farmers, while provincial leaders like Manitoba Premier Wab Kinyo have urged Carney to seize the opportunities. Carney emphasized that discussions with China would cover a wide range of issues beyond individual sectors. The federal government remains cautious, balancing domestic industry protection with international trade pressures.
Canada determining where can we trust the United States through ups and downs, and in what areas can we do that, and where should we have that exposure. It's a similar process with China. We are restarting broad engagement with China. We have a broader trading relationship with China. There are different levers that we have, or opportunities that we have for China in Canada. And we are in the process of having those discussions on a much broader range of issues than single sectors and single trades. Our foreign minister, Minister Anand, is arriving in Beijing basically as we speak, and will be meeting with her counterparts, and I expect to meet the senior Chinese leadership in the coming month or so, and we'll continue those discussions, and we'll see.
President Vladimir Putin have agreed to hold a new summit aimed at addressing the ongoing war in Ukraine. The decision followed a 2-hour phone call initiated by Moscow, during which both leaders discussed escalating tensions over U.S. military support for Kyiv, including the potential supply of long-range Tomahawk missiles. The summit is expected to take place in Budapest within the next 2 weeks, although no official date has been confirmed. The announcement comes just ahead of Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's visit to Washington, where he is set to meet Trump to push for deeper U.S. involvement in Ukraine's defense efforts. While described the conversation with Putin as very productive, the Kremlin issued a warning about the consequences of increased Western military aid to Ukraine. The renewed dialogue between Washington and Moscow signals a potential shift in diplomatic efforts, though skepticism remains about the summit's ability to produce tangible outcomes amid entrenched hostilities.
U.S. President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin agreed on Thursday to another summit on the war in Ukraine. After a more than 2-hour phone conversation that he called productive, Trump said he could meet with his Russian counterpart within the next 2 weeks in Budapest. The Kremlin confirmed plans for the meeting, though neither side provided a date. The surprise development came as Moscow feared fresh U.S. military support for Kyiv, with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky headed to the White House on Friday to push for just that, including U.S.-made long-range Tomahawk missiles. A Kremlin aide said that during the call, Putin told Trump that supplying long-range missiles to Ukraine would harm the peace process and damage U.S.-Russia ties. Trump later joked about the matter with reporters.
Well, of course, what do you think he's going to say? Please sell Tomahawks? No, he doesn't want Tomahawk is a vicious weapon. It's a vicious, offensive, incredibly destructive weapon. Nobody wants Tomahawks shot at him.
Zelensky, already in Washington, said Putin's decision to seek talks showed he was on the defensive. In a post on X, he said, quote, "We can already see that Moscow is rushing to resume dialogue as soon as it hears about Tomahawks." Kyiv and Moscow have, of late, been escalating their war with massive attacks on energy infrastructure. Ukraine is seeking missiles that would put Moscow and other major Russian cities within its range of fire. The White House had seemed in recent days to be increasingly frustrated with Putin and leaning toward granting Zelensky fresh support. Yet Trump's conciliatory tone following the Russia call left in question the near-term likelihood of assistance and reignited European fears of U.S. capitulation.
South Africa has initiated a major judicial corruption investigation targeting alleged misconduct, bribery and the criminal syndicate infiltration with the country's legal and law enforcement systems. The probe, backed by state authorities and anti-corruption watchdogs, follows explosive allegations against senior officials including suspended police minister Senzo Muchno and Deputy Police Commissioner Shadrach Sibia. President Cyril Ramaphosa formally announced the establishment of a judicial commission of inquiry in July 2025 after mounting pressure from civil society groups like Corruption Watch. The commission is led by former Constitutional Court Judge Musil Madlanga, and its public hearings began on September 1, 2025, focusing on corruption within the South African Police Service, the National Prosecuting Authority (NPA) and intelligence agencies. Pakistan Defence Minister Khwaja Asif has accused former ISI Chief General Faiz Hamid of enabling the Taliban's resurgence, sparking political uproar and renewed scrutiny of the country's intelligence operations. Asif alleged that Hamid's actions during his tenure contributed to the Taliban's growing influence in Afghanistan, particularly after the US withdrawal. The remarks have intensified tensions between Pakistan and the Afghan Taliban, especially amid rising cross-border militant activity. Opposition leaders and former military officials have criticized Asif's statements, calling it politically charged. General Hamid has not responded publicly. The controversy raises serious concerns about intelligence, accountability and civil-military relations in Pakistan as the government faces mounting pressure to address internal security threats and recalibrate its regional strategy. Hawaii's Kile volcano has once again erupted from its summit crater, continuing a series of spectacular lava displays that have captivated locals and tourists alike. The latest activity marks the 35th episode since the volcano resumed erupting in December 2024. Lava fountains have reached heights of up to 1,300 feet within the Halim's Uma crater. Located in Hawaii Volcanoes National Park, the U.S. Geological Survey has maintained a watch alert level and an aviation color code of orange, indicating ongoing volcanic activity without immediate threat to surrounding communities. These eruptions, occurring at semi-regular intervals, have become a mesmerizing natural spectacle, drawing widespread attention from onlookers and online viewers across the globe. That's the wrap of the world news. Keep watching CVR News English.